So I talked about this earlier. To factor something means what? What does it mean to factor something? It means that you're writing it as a product. You're figuring out two things that you can multiply together to give you the answer. So you're working backwards. This is the answer. Okay, I want to know what times what gives me 10x minus 15. Well, what's the opposite of multiplication? We're trying to figure out what two things we multiply together to arrive back at the answer. So the opposite of multiplication is division. So when you're factoring, you're actually dividing. So the first thing you want to do is figure out what is the greatest common factor. That's step one. What is the greatest common factor of 10x and 15? What's the greatest common factor? 5. Okay, 10x can be divided by 5, and negative 15 can be divided by 5. So we're going to write the greatest common factor here is 5, and we're working backwards. We're trying to figure out 5 times something will get me back to 10x minus 15. Well, if I divide this by 5, I'll get my answer. What's 10x divided by 5? What's 10 divided by 5? 2x. What's negative 15 divided by 5? Pardon? Positive or negative? Negative 3. See what I just did there? I'm working backwards. I'm figuring out the greatest common factor. Then I'm dividing everything by the greatest common factor. If you divide something, if I'm dividing this by 5, it means that when I multiply it by 5, I'm going to get back to the original question. What's 5 times 2x? 10x. What's 5 times negative 3? Negative. Is that what my original question was? That's it. That's how you factor. You figure out the greatest common factor, and then you divide everything by the greatest common factor and write it as a product. If you can divide by that number, you do the opposite and multiply to get back to the original question. Okay, let's try this one. Factor completely. Okay, so step 1, figure out what is the greatest common factor of 20x and 12x squared. What number are they both divisible by? The greatest number that can be divided into 20 and 12.
4.
Good, 4. So I know this can be divided by 4, and this can be divided by 4. Do they have a variable in common?
Yes.
What is it? Yes, x. So this can be divided by x, and this can be divided by x. Well, if it's going to be divided by x, to do the opposite, I'm going to take the greatest common factor, and I'm going to multiply it by something. How do you find the opposite of multiplication? We divide. So we're going to divide each term. We're going to divide each term by the greatest common factor. So step 1, find the greatest common factor. Number 2, divide each term by the greatest common factor. And then step 3, write as a product. So you're writing it as a product. You can use brackets, okay? The greatest common factor will always go in front. Whatever the greatest common factor is, you're taking that and you're multiplying it by whatever your answer was. So let's do step 2. Divide each term by the greatest common factor. What's 20 divided by 4? Okay, and x divided by x, it cancels itself out. We don't need to put the variable there. Then I have minus, a negative divided by a positive is a negative. 12 divided by 4. 12 divided by 4, 3. And then we have x squared divided by x. Does everyone remember how to divide powers? What do you do with the exponents when you are dividing powers? This was from grade 9. What do you do with the exponents when you divide powers? Do you add or subtract the exponents? Subtract. Subtract the exponents. Okay, so x to the power of 2 divided by x to the power of 1 equals x to the power of, what's 2 minus 1? 1. So I can just leave it. I don't have to put the 1 there. That's it, write as a product. I wrote it as a product. We'll check if this makes sense. Okay? Is it true that what's 4x times 5? 20x. What's 4x times negative 3x? What's a positive times a negative? Negative. What's 4 times 3? Good. What's x times x? X to the power of? Was that our original question? Yes. So we factored it. This is correct. This is factored form.